On today's Toy Spot, while we're having a look at the McFarlane Toys Movie Maniacs, we're looking today at Friday the 13th, Jason Voorhees. This comes to us from Movie Maniacs Series 1, actually. A very, very old series. It's about 1994, 1995. I would imagine this would be Jason depicted from Jason Goes to Hell, as the fact that he does include a Jason Goes to Hell poster, and a picture up at the top corner is depicting Jason as well from Jason Goes to Hell. I don't know if I would necessarily say that this is a real accurate Jason from Jason Goes to Hell, but nonetheless, we'll discuss that when we get the package opened up. And on the back of the package, way up at the top, way up at the top, you can see other figures that make up the line. There's Leatherface from Texas Chainsaw Massacre. There's Eve from Species 2. There's Freddy Krueger from A Nightmare on Elm Street. Patrick from Species 2. And of course, Jason Voorhees from Friday the 13th. Not really indicating Jason Goes to Hell. Makes some sense. I guess they don't want to indicate hell necessarily on package. Other things that you can get from the good folks at McFarlane Toys, we have Dark Ages Spawn Series 11, we have Spawn Series 12, and Kiss, the Psycho Circus, way down at the bottom there. And actually, this is 1995. Some could say that this would be a good retro spot, but then again, you know what? I think this toy line, because of what it ended up being, it was such a big collection for a lot of fans. I think I would just want to do this as a regular toy spot. What I am going to do is always take a break. I'm going to get this opened up, and when we come back, we're going to get a better look at the Crystal Lake Killer, Jason Voorhees. More to come. Stay tuned. With all Movie Maniacs figures, you get yourself a display base. A really nice, beefy display base. It's actually taller than the figure itself, and you can see featured inside the frame of skulls and spinal cords and human remains. Inside the human remains, evil has finally found a home. Jason Goes to Hell, the final Friday. The poster itself is accurate to the actual film poster, although the mask itself was not metallic, but nonetheless a really iconic. It was the kind of poster, looking at it, you thought to yourself, I don't have any idea what is going to be happening in this Friday the 13th movie, but I have to watch it. Some people didn't like it. I actually liked it. I liked Jason Goes to Hell. But I really like these bases too. These bases have always been a nice treat. When you opened up your Movie Maniacs, you had these right behind the figures like so, and you could kind of just have them on display, kind of more like a museum. This kind of thing is a lost art. Kind of wish that in some way, shape, or form they could actually incorporate this with new figures as well, but I understand for space confinements, maybe you don't have a lot of space to have, you know, a framed piece of art, and then all the figures in front of it. But a nice treat, a nice retro. To me, I'm going to go off just on a little tangent here. To me, these were figures that got me into collecting. In fact, when I do the review of him, the Freddy Krueger was actually the very first figure that Spot picked up when he was an adult. I use the term adult very loosely, but when I started getting back into collecting, Freddy Krueger was actually the figure that got me into it. Did you know that? This figure actually was harder to find. This is not my original figure, but this original figure was very hard to find. I found of the entire lot, Jason Voorhees was the hardest figure to get. I found Eve was pretty easy, and then I found that Leatherface was pretty easy, and so was Patrick. But Jason, on the other hand, very hard to come by. There was also a couple of bloodied versions. There was a bloodied version of Leatherface. There was a bloodied version of Freddy Krueger, and I think there was also an aquarium set that had Freddy Krueger and Jason in more bloodied versions as well. The figure, to some regard, does not stand up to the test of time. It's dated, but you know what? It might be dated, but gosh darn it, you gotta love a figure like this. I think it took some luxuries in the design of Jason. It kind of was an amalgamation of Jason in some regards. If we zoom up to his face right here, this was before really the in-depth sculpting. This was really just somebody sitting down at a table and sculpting, whereas now sometimes they do scans of the actual actors. But I mean, here you're at the bare bones. This is like the ground floor for what would eventually become full-blown movie figures. I think the sculpt is done exceptionally well for a figure this age. You can see the brain work and all the sculpt on the back of the head there. This part looks like Jason Goes to Hell. The mask itself, I almost feel as if it could be an amalgamation. I know they're intending it to be a Jason Goes to Hell figure, but it has elements to it of Friday the 13th Part 7, I would say, The New Blood, kind of in the way that it's sculpted. I mean, on the side it would have been more exposed down here. The way it protrudes, almost could say it's Friday the 13th Part 4 in some ways. The mask has a little more of a bluish tinge to it than just a straight out white. You can, I'm not going to do this, I don't want to disappoint you guys, but I'm not going to do this. You can, I have seen pictures, and I would say maybe if you want to Google it, I want to have, if you want to Google it, some people have actually taken the mask off. And there is, to some sense, there is a face underneath that, not a figure face that was really intended to be revealed, whether maybe they intended to have it come off at one point. But I've seen the face, and it's not bad, but you can tell it looks unfinished. You can see his eye, his one eye there. His other eye is not visible. Nice barren cavity of an eye. I love that, where you can't see Jason's eye. That's always the best. That's the best type. So his face. Oh, and actually, you know what? Let's go back. I'm sorry. We left the train station. Spot had to go back and pick up something. His nose is also a little more predominant on this mask than I think some standard Jason faces. I mean, the nose is a little more predominant. All right, Spot's got his stuff. Let's resume our way. While the face, I think, bears more resemblance to Jason Goes to Hell, with some aspects to the Friday the 13th Part 7, New Blood, his body, on the other hand, is definitely different. With Jason Goes to Hell, it was more of a gray suit, kind of a gray top, grayish colored pants, and his shirt was tucked in. Here, we've got more of a ripped shirt, and it's blue, where it's more tattered. You can see his disfigured body underneath here. It's solid plastic too. It is solid plastic. In fact, down here is a very rigid, sharp, not sharp, but it's definitely a jagged more style of plastic. It's not rubbery like you would get with newer figures. But you can see some of the detail work underneath that shirt. It almost looks like something from Freddy Krueger, where you would see the trapped souls. There's his chest underneath. And he's got exposed arms with exposed hands, well, gloved hands. And then regular pants. Tattered as well. I mean, the body, on a coloring level, bears more resemblance, I think, to Friday the 13th Part 4. The way it's tattered looks more like Friday the 13th Part 7. So, you know what? Some luxuries to the design, I think, to this figure were there. But I think it kind of is, if anything, an amalgamation of Jason Goes to Hell and Part 7 Jason. It's kind of like their new this was their interpretation of Jason, their ideal, ultimate Jason Voorhees. I think he has a really good side profile. That's a really neat side profile of Jason. His accessories that he comes included with, he comes with an axe. And you know what? On par with, I would say, Mezco, the McFarlane axe, the blood is a lot nicer. It's a little more what you would expect with blood, whereas Mezco's was just a red dye that was just splattered all over the place. So he's got his axe. He's got some sort of spear, hook, harpoon even. And of course his trusty machete. Rusted. The one interesting aspect though is that it's one of the few machetes from a Jason figure that is actually metallic. Well, it's not metallic, but it's got an actual mirrored sheen to it. Can you see that? You can actually see a reflection. Not my reflection, because I actually don't have a face, but you can see a reflection here. And the blood as well. Handles. I'm not really sure what's going on with the handle. It kind of looks like it's got rope all over it. Some embroidery work. Maybe that was Mrs. Voorhees. Jason's going to get a... You know, if Jason's going to have a knife, I'm going to make it nice and decorative for him. And you can just slide it into his hand like so. In the way of his articulation, Jason's head rotates left and right, although it's really stiff. His arms rotate left and right, back and forth, I should say. He has a swivel in the elbow, swivel in the hand, swivel in the waist. Legs go forward and back via a V swivel. And then there's nothing in the feet. He is very bare basic of a figure. But you know what, though? I love this figure. It's just got such a retro feel to it. Even though I'm not doing this necessarily as a retro spot, he's definitely got a retro feel to it. And he is one of my favorite Jasons. Say what you will, he is definitely one of my favorite Jasons just because he represents to me my earlier days of collecting figures. These are the figures that got me back into collecting and to some extent got me eventually into reviewing. So if you want to thank me for reviewing, not that you should, but you can thank figures like this. These were the figures that got me back into the collecting field and eventually got me into reviewing. Jason from McFarlane Toys, Movie Maniacs Series 1, just from an old nostalgic factor, I'm going to give him a 6.5. He's not the greatest of figures, but he's definitely a fun figure to have on display. Today's Toy Spot, we're having a look at the McFarlane Toys Movie Maniacs Series 1, Jason Voorhees. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time.